Ladies and gentlemen, please silence your phones and hush your babies. The show is about to start. Hi everyone, welcome to a live stream. We're here live so I can see your comments. I will chat to you in the comments if I get a chance because it is an action-packed show tonight. We're talking temples, and that's it. We're talking temples. And we're also going to be talking about some changes that are happening in Utah. So make sure you stick around for those at the end because I wouldn't give you all the good stuff up front, would I? Otherwise, you wouldn't stick around. So I am, that was very Yoda of me, joined I am by Peter Bleakley of Mormon Civil War and Ruthless Heathen, Ruth Heath. Welcome both.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
Every moment you do is interesting. You don't need clickbait at the end. Like,
Oh,
it's quality all the way through, mate. Come on.
Clickbait. We've got to keep people. We've got to keep people. So this is how we're going to keep people. Is change is coming. Ooh. But first, we want to talk. We're going straight in, guys. There's no preamble. We're going to go straight into the fact we're talking about. Oh, Culch. Yeah, there was a Shush Your Babies intro. Culch is like, oh man, no Shush Your Babies intro. There absolutely was. Go back and rewatch it, and then double speed to catch up. You won't miss much of what Peter says. So we're talking about the groundbreaking of the Birmingham England Temple. That's what happened yesterday. Very exciting. Scott Whiting, area president, I believe he is, was involved in the groundbreaking, as were many other important people. And it's such an important event that they've got. I suppose there'll be hickory on the handles. Those spades, do we think?
Do we have hickory?
Golden in appearance.
They were shiny gold.
Yeah,
I remember when you at the London Temple Visitor Centre, when they used to bother funding them, had the gold trowel that its sort of foundation stone was laid by
from the cornerstone ceremony.
Yes, that's right. That was always an interesting little treasure next to the golden plates. Interesting.
Speaking of treasure, Kelly's right off the bat sending a $10 super sticker. Thank you very much.
That's very sweet.
Donations and whatnot are appreciated in the chat. Ruth, your thoughts on the golden shovels and the groundbreaking ceremony?
I just thought we've pushed the boat out because I know Seven Dwarfs is getting a relaunch. We've actually got 14 shovels there, haven't we? If we wanted to go hi ho, there's we can double up and have a background crew as well. No, I think
like Johnny Lingo, the more cows.
The more shovels, the better. The more groundbreaking, the better. And I know we can do a compare and contrast, that's fine. But which temple was it recently where they almost did it under cover of darkness? Was it Cody, Wyoming?
Might have been Cody, Wyoming, yeah.
Where they didn't announce it. There was a few still shots and it was like a drive-by. Cameraman jumped out, took a couple of shots of a few people with a shovel, and then off they went again, just so they could say they did it. Whereas I think we've pushed the boat out a little bit, haven't we, in the UK, and made a bit of a fuss, and rightly so.
I think we have, and I think what's interesting about this, and what's going to frame this conversation, is that the Birmingham Temple is an example of when the church does it right. I have no problem with the church building temples. The church has a right religiously to build buildings that it wants to use for religious worship. I support that right. I think that's an important thing for them to be able to do for those that want to adhere to the LDS faith. I don't agree with the church building temples off the basis of lies and bullying, which we'll get to. But in Birmingham, there was none of that. As far as I can tell, they did everything they needed to. They consulted properly with the local community. They didn't threaten to sue anyone. They did all the proper checks they needed to do. I think some people were a little bit upset about some trees that might have to get chopped down, but I think they got permission to remove some trees from the site. And all in all, I think the church did a very good job of being a good neighbor and getting this temple built. And as a result, there was a lot of people from the community involved in the groundbreaking, not just members of the church, people from various faith groups. And local dignitaries were all involved in the groundbreaking. So this is what community goodwill looks like when you're building a temple that you haven't upset a load of people about.
Yeah.
Peter, you were the only one that sat through it. So I'm going to come to you in a second. But Ruth, what are your thoughts?
Okay.
I just think it's really positive. It's a really positive. I mean, it's an image. We get that, and it's for It's to do a certain job, but it's really positive. They didn't hide it. They didn't have to do it under cloak of darkness. They've had community support, and the community's been involved in the process all along the way, so it seems. And I'm really proud of them for that. I'm proud of that UK, and particularly the Midlands, because that's where we are, way that they've dealt with this and applied for planning permission. I just think they've done it the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've said that all along. Whenever we've been talking about this, whenever we've been, live streaming and putting up the plans and all that sort of stuff, we've been making it clear that the church has been acting properly, and this should be a model for the way that they act in other parts of the world. Peter, you watched the whole thing. Can you report to us from the field?
Absolutely. Can you scroll to the design actually of?
I don't have a picture of the design. Sorry, Peter.
It was one of the ones from the Birmingham stake. It has a picture of it in the corner. But anyway, so I mean, the first plus about this temple is it's very much in keeping. It's really respectful of local.
There it is in the background.
Norms. You can sort of see in the back. Is there another one though?
There is not another one, Peter.
A bit more of this. Oh, sorry. So it kind of looks like a neoclassical parish church, but it's just right. It really feels very English. It's to scale. It's proportionate to the site. And it shows that and certainly speaking as an art and design teacher, that if you actually genuinely respect the community you're putting something in, you can design something, especially when you're filthy rich, you can afford to design something that's in keeping and, keeps everyone happy, meets local regs and still looks beautiful. And the church has no problem with that wherever they have no choice but to collaborate with planning laws as they've done in Belgium and Paris and so on. So it's a real shame when we experience, common sense and goodwill occurring in Europe, that in America, they're just living in this, what seems like a strange dystopia of constantly fighting over everything. Everything has to be a battle. It's all my rights and you can't stop me, and this sort of cowboy attitude. So the service was lovely. It was very low key because it's a very small site and they've got a little stake centre on there. So that little old man, who's probably one of the older Birmingham members, shuffled up to the pulpit on his Zimmer frame to give the opening prayer, bless him. And then they had talks by a young girl, by a young man who seemed to perhaps be returned missionary age, and a young adult woman. And they were all there we go. And they were all fantastic, very articulate, really made you feel proud. And as Scott Whiting said to the local mayor, look how wonderful this area's young people are, and kind of what we're doing for them, as it were. Which was appropriate because they'd done a great job. And then he gave a fairly short dedicatory prayer, and he prayed for all the contractors and subcontractors would all sort of have a positive experience working on the temple, that they would do their best work, as it were, to do a quality job. Something that's emerged is that they're planning to close the London Temple once this is built. And do renovations for a few years on it. And I'm like, that they already totally renovated it in the 90s. I guess that seems a long time ago.
It's a long time ago.
I don't know. Yeah. But so this is going to be quite important.
It's something like 32 years ago. Yeah. Something like that.
I can't see what they'd have to do that would take literally years, though, if they're closing it for years. But anyway, we'll
I know a major rehaul. Russ M. Nelson might have some ideas of different things he wants temples to be able to do.
He's changing his mind about the fonts.
Who knows? I have heard rumors that they might try and bring back some of the features from the way the temple used to be pre the sort of big overhaul in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, where you used to be able to kind of see the baptismal font from further up in the building and whatnot.
That was lovely. Yeah,
it was good. So
that was cool.
Sorry.
Go on,
Ruth.
I was saying, in Godstone recently there was a sinkhole open up, so it could be that they really, really need to make sure all the foundations are safe and sound, because they've had a very local sinkhole in that area. So whether the ground is in that area is compromised in any sort of way, I don't know. But
and also the amount of times I've shared video footage of
flooding.
temple volunteers bailing out the temple
Yeah.
because it's flooded again.
Yeah,
Hopefully what they'll be doing is maybe
it's
flood
flooded
prevention.
regularly since it was actually constructed, very first constructed back in the 50s. It's a really
So that
bad
meant to be a sign. So that meant to be a sign of God's disapproval.
The temple flooding. You'd
It's not a
think.
good sign, is it?
So I think they need to
Trying to cleanse the temple.
I think they're going to really need to
Oh,
fix
dear.
that, and Birmingham Temple will provide them with capacity. But the question will be when the Birmingham Temple's open, and Preston, and London, potentially even Edinburgh, because who knows when a site will be announced for that, but I can imagine it will come soon. Then what? Then what are we going to be seeing in terms of sort of how busy these temples are, how many members can actually attend them? Birmingham Temple is going to be open not very often by the looks of it.
No.
By the looks of the sort of proposed schedules that were put in as part of the planning permission, it doesn't look as though it's going to be open more than sort of evenings during the week and then some Saturdays.
And they really don't have staff to be able to do anything other than that, unless they are literally going to, have people come in and serve their missions from other parts of the world, staffing it. I just don't see how else they will have it function. There just isn't the membership to run it around the clock like they used to do 30 odd years ago with London and Preston when it first opened.
Parker Baldwin says, would they be tearing down my old mission home for the Brum Temple? Parker, it's already gone, I'm afraid. The old mission home is gone. So, that's where that building will be going on that spot. But Wild Green Chapel will still remain. So if you have fond memories of that chapel, you should still be able to visit there. But yeah, it's gone. It's gone.
So it looks beautiful,
Peter.
but as Ruth and you were kind of saying, actually, this is a big problem in disguise. What you're seeing there is a little black hole that is going to suck up all the available time of anyone able to do service. And while they're servicing the temple and being guilted into going to it, and you've got a temple, why aren't you all going to it all the time and try and get the youth focused on that? That will mean, I'm predicting an acceleration of people leaving the church and a failure of missionary work, because the members who need to be focused on the living and helping those dying congregations to survive or grow again are going to have most of their time sucked up with the temple. And they've got this kind of happy, magical idea that somehow the temple significantly increases faith and conversions and everything in an area. But what we're hearing all across the church here and in America is they are desperately short of temple workers. They have made a huge kind of psychological shift to having very young people do temple work, just as you did on your mission, Nemo, which has sort of bolstered numbers a little bit. But there's, we're always hearing of stake leaders in the Wasatch Front pleading with people to go to be temple workers or to serve missions in temples around the world, and they're just going to have diminishing returns as the boomers die, and they haven't got literally the population to keep them open. So I do worry very much that this is going to become a major distraction from what you actually need to do to keep a congregation alive. And while they're spending whatever money on these temples, they're still giving about 5 pence a year in the youth budget for every ward in our country. And also, I've got my open wound still. Today was Welling Ward's.
Peter, before we go to the Welling Ward, because that'll take us down a different route, but we will get to Welling Ward. I just want to show this, which is Reverend Andrew Teal, who comes to the Oxford congregation very often. He's on the left with, I believe, something like the mayor of Sutton Coldfield, which is the town where the temple's being built. It's not actually in Birmingham; it's in a separate town just on the edge. So yeah, that's who was in attendance, and they had a lot of civic support for this building. The local councillor was there; he participated in the groundbreaking. So yeah, I think this temple is going to be a good thing, primarily for the community. I think it will be interesting, like you said, to see how it's staffed, and I think it's an astute observation that this will become a rod for the members' backs, because now they're going to be guilted into attending the temple and working the temple when they could be building up the community. And that's gonna be difficult. But can we go on to the inverse of this, which is where we have a temple being built in a way that is upsetting to the town. Yeah, let's go there. Because we've had updates in the case of Fairview, Texas. For those who don't know, I may or may not have... Oh, there you go. Peter's in his Fairview United shirt. Thank you very much, Peter. For those who may or may not know, I flew out to Texas last year to say to the town of Fairview that the church is not being honest when they say that the height of steeples is part of our religious observance, because it's just not. But the fight has gone on nonetheless, and there was some mediation towards the end of last year, non-binding mediation, that saw the church bring the size of its design down to about 120 feet and about 30,000 square feet or 25,000 square feet or so. They really kind of shrunk the size of the building, which was good of them. But some people in the town were still not happy with the height. The mayor said some things about this being, you know, the first innings, I think indicating that there was still a process to go through. And the next step was for the church to submit their designs on the 13th of January, I want to say from memory. But that didn't happen. The church sent a letter of intent to sue. And then, the mayor got a letter from a stake president, and he says there are serious inaccuracies. The Texas town mayor responds to LDS church letter in ongoing temple dispute. So the mayor wants to talk to a decision maker. He's made that very clear. He wants to speak to a decision maker of the LDS church, because he said so far all spoke to his attorneys. Instead, he gets a letter from a stake president, which was probably written by lawyers. Ruth, have you read this letter?
Yes, I have, and I think it's disgusting.
Well, here it is. Give me some of your thoughts.
I genuinely, right off the bat, I think it's disgusting that a stake president who, doesn't matter how falutin the title sounds, that is a volunteer in the religion. That is somebody whose day job is maybe a mechanic or a, you know, carpenter or a maybe an accountant. But next week he could be the ward chorister. He is a volunteer. And that's who the church has said, we can't be bothered to talk to this mayor, this person who has got the responsibility of leading the council and making the right decision and following due process. Although he's asking, rightly so, to speak to a decision maker, we'll push him off with some volunteer. That is shockingly bad. And that stake president, one, should be embarrassed, and two, should be ashamed of the church for allowing his name to be written on the bottom of that letter and allowing the lawyers to draft it for him and then his signature be put on the bottom of it. Should be honestly embarrassed about it.
Well, President Daniel Trithel said, "Dear Mayor Lesnar and Fairview Town Council members, I write this letter on behalf of the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to discuss the proposed temple project in Fairview." When is the church ever going to let a stake president speak on their behalf? This must have been written by lawyers. The church wouldn't allow him just to write this letter, certainly not without approval. So my guess is it was written by lawyers. Maybe it was drafted up by him. Maybe that is his day job. I don't know anything about President Trithel. He might be a lawyer. But if he's drafted it up, it's certainly not just been sent. This has been looked over, nitpicked over. And Trithel... Oh, thank you. Someone's saying it's pronounced Trithel. Thanks, Gorf. But yeah. Anyway, so he says, I'm going to read this out because I think it's important. He said, we value our relationship with the community and are eager to work together for a positive outcome to this project and our long-term relationship as friends and neighbors. All right. Temples are sacred to us. They are houses of the Lord, sanctuaries where we commune quietly with him, unite families for eternity, and experience hope and peace. Each of the 376 temples around the world embodies this faith. Okay, I don't know if there are 376 temples that are kind of built and operating at the moment, so I'm not sure about that number, but never mind. We also deeply cherish our connection with the communities where temples are located. That's interesting, considering one of the first things you did was threaten to sue the town when you started talking with them about this. Local members of the church are an integral part of the Fairview community and the surrounding areas. We appreciate the vision for development that preserves Fairview's unique character. We hope to support such an approach and want to reassure residents that the temple will be a beautiful and peaceful place that enhances the neighborhood in alignment with the long-term vision for the area. Well, no, because the long-term vision for the area is that buildings not be too tall. So they've clearly misunderstood what the long-term vision for the area is, even though residents have been saying that over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. They've said from the get-go, you can have a temple. We would love you to have a temple. Please abide by our rules and regs, as we ask of every other religious organisation, every other commercial building. We can give you a different site where you, if you want it that tall. If you want to be here, perfect, but you just need to be within our rules and regs. That is not a lot to ask.
No, and I think they quite rightly reminded the town, as I reminded the town during my address. I said to them, bear in mind, you are the recipients of the highest extant exemption to those regulations of
Yeah.
any religious group in the town.
Yeah.
Because
The state
without
says.
getting into it with the Methodists, the meeting house next to where the temple's going to be built is the tallest building of a religious nature in the town. It just is.
Yeah.
And so for them to try and, you know, say that they're being persecuted or whatever when they already have the tallest is just mental. Anyway.
It really is. And there is a link here, and I'm not going to name names, but there is a ex-bishop of ours who lived and worked in the UK for many years and served in Leicester stake as a bishop, who now lives in Fairview, stood up at that meeting that you were at, Nemo, and gave a presentation, as did many members of his family, including his father. And he will no doubt come and use the Birmingham Temple because he comes backwards and forwards to the UK for business all the time. And he knows in his heart of hearts that steeple's height does not matter. It really, really doesn't. And I just find it interesting. I know he spoke to you when you first went over there. I find it interesting. He has not got his head in the sand about this, but yet felt comfortable with towing the party line and saying what he said in that meeting, even though he knows what the experiences in the UK is, even though he knows that steeples are not important, and has been to the Paris Temple. And do you know what I mean? And I think there are not, this isn't just a little town in Texas and they've never traveled further. People, members who stood up at that meeting were saying untruths. And knowingly saying untruths.
And saying untruths at the behest of people like John Cannon, who wrote letters telling them that the height of the steeple is part of our religious worship, and you may feel impressed to mention that.
Yeah.
Or words to that effect.
Yeah.
So carrying on, the church says the chosen 8.1 acre site is well positioned among existing religious buildings along a busy commercial road, allowing for beautiful landscaping that will enhance and beautify the surroundings. No one has any concerns about the church's ability to landscape a temple. If they are good at wasting money on, no, not wasting money. If they're good at spending money on one thing, it is temple landscaping. You know, I've spoken to the individuals who used to landscape the London Temple. It's very well done. The church is very good at that. So no one need have any concern that this will be landscaped badly or even in a gaudy way. The church does landscaping very well, I think. Personally, to my taste, you know, I find their buildings a bit ostentatious sometimes. I find the temples unnecessarily large and bright sometimes, but the landscaping they're contained within is 9 times out of 10 very well done.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he said we're committed to not only meeting but exceeding local standards whenever reasonably possible. Okay, some would disagree there about their commitment to the dark sky ordinances, etc. You know, I was listening to the mayor of the town, Henry Lesnar, talk on Mormonish, and he was talking about how he caught the edge of the Milky Way the other night because the skies are so dark where they are, and he was just outside his front door. So the people clearly want to preserve their dark skies, and I think that is important to them too. So it's not just steeple height, I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Right, Peter, I want to bring you in after this. It says, however, it is troubling that members of the town council seem to have already withdrawn their support from the agreement made during the recent mediation. Again, they don't mention that that agreement was non-binding and subject to approval through town processes. The church continually makes the implication in this letter that somehow the town of Fairview is reneged on some sort of deal, some sort of handshake deal that they promised to undertake. So what they promised to do was support the resolution as it went through, but ultimately, you know, it's still got to go through. When the church
they're
sought to
democratic
engage,
representatives of their people, the people
exactly.
are saying no, they don't approve.
And so on that point, I want to bring you in on this, Peter. When the church sought to engage with council members individually to discuss their commitment to this compromise, we were met with refusal. And the reason they were met with refusal, as I'm sure we all know by now, is that the state of Texas has, I think they call them sunshine laws. Basically, they can't have a closed meeting with, they can't be lobbied by private individuals like this. They can only meet with people out in the open amongst other people. So the church is saying here, when the church sought to engage with local council members individually to discuss their commitment, basically what they're saying is, when we tried to get them in a room alone to try and suss out where they are with this, they said, no, we can't get in a room alone with you. I don't think bribe them. I wouldn't go so far as to suggest
Well,
the
they
church
have
might
done
do
that. They have. No, they have. They've literally bribed people in Wyoming and other places. They, you know, that's all been investigated now. That they had a whole campaign building up to some of the other controversial temple planning things, where the town planners, you know, the people in the council making the decisions, all had quite substantial donations to their.
Oh, that was in Nevada, wasn't it?
Interests. Yeah,
That's a lobbying group.
So they have done that. That's been real. That
it was a lobbying group. Yeah. Anyway, for
Did
legal
the church
reasons,
tired?
I'm not going to say that the church has bribed anyone.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that Texas has those rules. And I'm, you know, it's a shame for the church that they feel that that has somehow impeded them, but they need to look internally then and say, why would we need to be able to speak behind closed doors if we're doing things to the letter of the law, in fact, going above and beyond the letter of the law? Why would it need to be behind closed doors? If it, surely that they can feel comfortable that they can have those conversations out in the open, because they're going to go above and beyond. That's what they've said in that letter.
Well, culture's making the point that this is just part of church culture, really, is that the church often wants to be alone with people in private rooms, having the sorts of discussions maybe they don't want to have out in open. But on a serious note, this is from ABC4 News. The link to it should be in the description. If it's not now, it will be by the end of this broadcast. It says, Fairview Mayor Henry Lesnar said the town has not withdrawn its support for the agreement, and that each representative of the town council individually chose not to respond to the church to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Again, they want to stay on the right side of these this Texas Open Meetings Act, right? As they should. The town has met its commitments coming out of the November mediation meeting. The church has not, Lesnar said. They were supposed to have filed documentation associated with the mediated building design on January the 13th. Instead, they decided to send a notice of lawsuit letter, right? So instead of because they'd heard some things that made them jumpy, because they'd heard some idea that, because I think what the church was expecting is that the mediated agreement would happen and then the town council would just force it upon the people.
And
that's not how a democracy works. It might be how things work in the church, but it's not how a democracy works. So I think the church got jumpy at the idea that the town leaders wouldn't just bulldoze their residents into accepting this. And when they heard from the residents, they were sympathetic. Some of the residents' continued concerns. The church has gone, oh no, they're reneging on the deal. Let's just sue them. And Lesnar has said he's still waiting for the courtesy of some sort of response from LDS leadership, as he has requested to meet with anyone who is not a church attorney. He said he's willing to travel to Salt Lake City for the meeting. I'd love to see that. After more than a year, this is Lesnar speaking, I, as the highest elected official in the town of Fairview, still have not met anyone who is a decision maker in the LDS church. All we see are attorneys.
Good for him.
Good for him.
I'm glad
Donald Trump would have phoned him by now. Like literally the Donalds would have been on the phone to him by now, but not our church leaders. With all this hype, I mean, just stepping back from the injustice and the cruelty of bullying small towns with your lawyers and your wealth, and weaponizing the religious freedom amendments or whatever, the complete lack of common sense about reputational harm, this incredible arrogance, and again, it seems to be one. I hope it's a mostly American problem and not the rest of us. But this idea of just power struggle and battle and the polarized culture they've got on, they love all this stuff. You can see the glee in Dallin Oaks and others' eyes when they want to, sock it to whoever they perceive their enemies to be. They thoroughly enjoy this, and it's completely distorted, like their moral compass somehow. Because or maybe it is an international church thing. We've always been aware of how incredibly fragile the church is outside of Utah. We know that it's always hanging by a thread. Our tiny little congregations, we baptize multitudes, very few of them stay. It's really hard work. And the last thing we need is to alienate people. And we've had to deal with all our lives with an incredible backlog of terrible public reputation for the church as a polygamous sex cult that trafficked women to Utah. the truth of which has turned out to be even more crazy and bad than we ever thought it was.
Can I point you to what 99 Blackbirds is saying
so
here?
to now take these hits to reputation with everything that's on Netflix about all the child killers and everything, just there's no common sense. There's no sense of self-preservation.
Peter,
There's
99
no sense of witnessing.
We've got 99 Blackbirds in the comments pointing something out here that I think kind of sums up your point, being that the church is kind of inflicting PR losses on itself that it doesn't need to bring. They're saying Ward Radio said something along the lines of, I think this sounds about right, but I'm not going to say it's a quote.
Yeah,
I'm sorry we're building a big, beautiful temple in your neighborhood. And it's like what they don't understand, and what I think the church
we've
can't
decided is good for you.
Yeah, the church can't see outside itself and see what it is that other people perceive of them. So Ward Radio going, oh, it's a big, beautiful building. That's entirely subjective. It may not be big and beautiful. But then we've got the lovely
contrast, haven't we, of how they are handling it in Birmingham, Sutton Coldfield, and how they've got fantastic PR and they've got fantastic relationships with the multicultural society that is the Midlands across the UK, and how they recognise and are humble enough to realise we catch more flies with sugar than vinegar. We're not to go into this expecting a fight. We're to go into this recognising we need friends and recognising that we're better off seeing our similarities with other religious groups and different groups, and asking for their support and their kindness and their understanding, and listen to them and listen to what we need to do to meet their needs, and vice versa. That's how you make things move along. Why can they get it so right in some parts of the world and so wrong in others? I just don't understand.
I think some of it, sorry, Americans in the audience, I think some of it is to do with the attitudes towards rights. And I think there is an idea in the US, particularly because of the things like the First Amendment, where you just have a right to your religious wants rather than your sort of religious freedoms. It seems there's a line blurred there, whereas a freedom to act religiously, but then that kind of just becomes to whatever religious whim you fancy, you just get to have. And so there's a certain sense of entitlement, I think, that comes from leaders in that culture, versus this idea that we understand that we're a small fish in a big pond in the UK, and so we have to play nicely, and we got a local architecture firm to design it in a way that would be sympathetic to the area and all that sort of stuff. So I think the church, certainly in America, can't see outside itself and can't see the damage it's doing to itself. And so these subjective statements like, we're building a big, beautiful building, I think they don't realize that that's subjective, and it might be big and beautiful to the people in that neighborhood. And I think the wins on PR terms are being won by local individuals. They're not being dictated by the leaders of the church. Those PR wins aren't the priority of the church, because the church can't see how it could possibly lose in PR terms. I think that's kind of where I become, certainly the leaders in Salt Lake. I have to thank Brian Polaverde. Thank you very much for your super sticker. Thank you very much for that. Thanks, Brian. So yeah, that's what I'd say about that. But there's a bit more that I want to say about this letter, if I may. They say, while we continue to believe that the town's denial of the current application substantially burdens the practice, again, okay, fine, they have denied the current application, but you haven't given them a new one to then consider. While we believe that the town's denial of the current application substantially burdens the practice and expression of religious beliefs of the church, you may believe that, but I would disagree. We would still be prepared to shoulder that burden and file our application for the smaller temple. Okay. Before filing an application for a smaller temple, we ask only for assurance that the town would live up to the original obligations it made during mediation. Now, I don't understand how the church doesn't understand the word non-binding or the phrase non-binding.
No.
The town had no obligations other than to be open to receiving a new application from yourself, which you failed to submit, as certainly as I understand it. They say, we remain concerned, however, that our religious rights could be compromised if the town does not honor its word as agreed to during the mediation. Again, there's this idea that they've signed up to some uncompromising thing that they just haven't. We entered mediation with hopes for a respectful and expedient solution that would advance everyone's goals. That remains our hope. Well, so they try and say the town's being disrespectful. I can't think of anything more disrespectful than turning up into a town threatening to sue if you can't have a building that's almost 3 times as tall as the current tallest religious building in town, which happens to be your own meeting house. Seems disrespectful to me. Ruth?
Did the mayor accidentally pinky promise on this and not remember?
Oh,
Was there a funny handshake and he doesn't realise what he's agreed to? It must be something like that.
Spencer Davis coming in with his most sensical comment of the night, saying, I don't care if the temple has a steeple or not. I think it's fine if it's shorter. Couldn't agree more, Spencer. I think they should get the
Absolutely.
temple built and stop worrying about the height of it. I totally agree with you there. So there's this line here. It's important to clarify misinformation that may have circulated about this process. Oh, if that doesn't boil my blood, I don't know what does.
Let's rewrite history now. Are we ready?
I went to Texas to
has he
try and
looked
correct
at the Darvo
it.
description at all?
I went to Texas to try and correct misinformation, and look where that got me. Some have said that the appearance in Texas may have led to my excommunication. We might not know until certain documents come to light, but certainly it could be part of it, even though my state president denies it. The church started this process, though, with misinformation about the importance of steeple height. So it's just incredibly ironic now for them to come back and say that, oh, we want to set the record straight. There's been misinformation.
Oh my God. It's so shameless.
Peter, your thoughts?
Yeah, shameless. State president, what's the name? Trithel. He's an accountant.
Oh, is he? Okay,
That's
thank
his day
you.
job. Accountant. So bless him. So I don't know. It's so odd, this, as you say, he doesn't have the authority to speak for the church. He's not a decision maker in any of these matters.
No.
Yet it is written as if it is an official from Salt Lake HQ kind of legal negotiation almost, about next steps and making judgments about what's happened. So it's very odd. Why was it not, maybe if the stake district has lots of stakes involved, why is it just one stake president sending it, not something in all of their names? That might have been a bit more impactful. Yeah, it's just all a bit fishy, isn't it?
We just I don't want to get too booked because the rest is just repetitions of, we believe we're protected by the law and our intention is blah, blah, blah. And we, the way forward is we invite the town to reaffirm its commitments it made during the mediation process, right? But there is a line in here that I think is quite funny. They say,
is it the one where it says sincerely?
No. It says, our intention has always been to collaborate openly at every stage of this process. After they've just been complaining that the town council won't meet with them in private. So what is it? Do you want to collaborate with them openly, or are you wanting meetings with them in private that you're upset that you're not getting? Which is it?
Bribe them.
Anyway, right.
Like I say, if they were sincere, this wouldn't be the letter that they would be written and writing, and it wouldn't be from who's written the letter either. If they were actually sincere in finding a resolution to this situation, they would have gone about it.
The church has just, the church has just done a lot of fanfare about calling a new couple to lead hosting.
Yes. Yeah, so the professional schmoozers.
The very handsome and schmoozer and his tiny, lovely wife are like the professional greeters. So it's their job to make any visitors to the church comfortable and to sort of pamper them and be like the diplomats. So they've literally called, ta-da, but still the mayor of one of the most public, difficult PR disasters the church is having at the moment. They've made no effort to smoosh him at all. It's like, come on, guys. You're not even good at being effectively evil.
The state president isn't a paid employee of the church. A corporation wants to build a building in their town. That corporation has many employees at all different levels, and the mayor has just said, can I have a conversation with the decision maker, please? Can I please speak to somebody who works for you, works for the corporation? That's what he's asking.
And who can make decisions.
Who can make decisions. The state president doesn't work for the corporation. He's a volunteer. He's not an employee. And that's what I just don't think.
Tristan Lofting is asking a similar question. Why isn't an area authority writing these messages to Fairview local government? Now, area authorities are also volunteers, so that wouldn't be any better.
Mm.
But I think part of the reason is because last time John Cannon opened his mouth, he's the one that said, "Oh, steeple height is part of our religious worship," and that's been so thoroughly
Yeah.
debunked now that he's probably
He
just
can't
not.
show his face again.
Yeah, he can't
Yeah.
speak for the church now because he's
Mm.
said some stuff that's weakened the church's position. I think, the
Yeah.
church's lawyers project this sort of outward confidence, but I'm just not sure that they're actually that confident that they would win this.
I like Jay Bishop's comment.
What's
Nick,
Jay Bishop saying?
It's not how big your steeple is, it's what you do with it.
Bravo,
Oh,
Jay
dear.
Bishop. Thank you very much. Now I've got to work out a segue here onto our final part of the night because we got 20 minutes.
We got it.
Left or so.
It involves spades. Remember spades?
Oh, yes.
Subtle hint spades.
Indeed.
What was it?
So, Ruth, do you remember it?
Let
From
Ruth do the
from the
segue.
golden scoops that were being used at thanks for the close-up. From the golden scoops that were used to do the groundbreaking, we're going from one scoop to another.
There we go. Thank you very much. We have a scoop. I think it's
That's
a scoop.
class.
I've not
That's
seen
class.
this anywhere else. That was wonderful, Ruth. I'll have to
You're
increase your
welcome.
pay.
You're
It's a scoop that we have. It's been sent to me. It's a letter that was circulated to bishops, state presidents, etc., in the Utah area. It's not marked private or confidential in any way. So because it's been sent to me, I believe that then I can share it as far as I'm aware. So here we go. It is a letter or a memorandum that was sent on March the 19th, 2025 to Utah area 70 state presidents, bishops, and branch presidents from the Utah area presidency, and it is about a Utah law requirement for something called sex offender search. So let's just read it. Dear brethren, Utah has adopted a law requiring the church to check both the Utah Child Abuse Offender Registry, also called the Utah Sex and Kidnap Offender Registry, and the National Sex Offender Public website before allowing any individual 18 or older to hold a calling that places them into regular and repeated care, supervision, guidance, or control of anyone under age 18. The church supported this law. Now, I want to fact check that down the road and see if the church did indeed support this law. If anyone can point me in the comments to where I can find voting records of individuals in the Utah state legislature or whatever it's called, any of that sort of stuff, anyone that can help me navigate the Utah legal system to research this would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. And the church says they supported the law, but I will believe them for now that they did. And what this looks like to me is that there is a law coming into place that means anyone working with children has to now be background checked. Right? Is that what that sounds like to both of you?
That's how it reads to me.
Okay, which means that when we were asking the question just sort of last year before, saying, well, if we can do background checks in the UK, why can't they do it everywhere else? Utah might finally be doing it because there might be a law finally passed that requires them to. And if the church has indeed had a hand in crafting that law, or certainly in supporting that law, then what the church may have done is institute background checks in the most Mormon place of all, in Utah. Thoughts, reactions? Ruth, then Peter?
My straight off the bat one is fantastic. My second one is it shouldn't take a whole load of Netflix documentaries to trigger this sort of change when there's had plenty of sensible people for telling them for a very, very long time you have issues, and this would be an easy way to mitigate some of the harm. It doesn't get rid of it, but it mitigates it. It protects it. It puts some safety nets in place.
Your husband's saying wise things in the chat, Ruth, saying they may support the law, as in they'll not oppose it, but if they supported the principle, they would not have waited for a law. Yeah, that's a fair point. Peter, any other points before we read the rest of the letter?
It's the best news. It's basically, we now have precedent literally in Utah, in the heart of the church, for normalizing every congregation being obliged to do background checks on the people working with young and vulnerable people. Or maybe they haven't included vulnerable, but certainly young people.
Just anyone under the age of 18.
Yeah, well done, 21st Century Saints and Nemo and everyone pioneering that, making that a precedent here in the UK, which was the first time it had been initiated locally rather than being imposed by government.
Yeah.
This one had to be imposed by government, but if the church did support it, that's brilliant news.
Mhm.
I hope it means that the leadership have finally realised that maybe there's a problem with an endless parade of child abuse cases that they've facilitated and covered up, and people who have known backgrounds of child abuse still being put into positions of leadership and authority. It's again, perhaps we should remind our American friends that the official lawyer for the church here in the UK declared to our government that stake presidents and bishoprics are the people responsible for safeguarding in their congregations. It's not them. And that probably means legal liability as well. That if you don't know that you are assigning people to work with young people who could have terrible backgrounds of abuse and already be on a register somewhere, and you're not even checking, surely that makes you incredibly vulnerable to lawsuits. And that should have occurred to everyone long ago.
Can we point to what Scott S is saying in the
Yeah.
comments here? Because I just want a point of clarity. Scott says it sounds like they just require the church to search the sex offender list before giving callings. A background check would mean paying for a record poll and seeing all crimes the person has committed. That's very true. What I think this is, though, this is a form of background check being done, which I think will undermine a lot of arguments from people saying they don't want background checks of individuals working with young people, because now the church is already checking one part of a person's background, so it should make it very easy then for a full background check to be conducted at a later date or to be acceptable. But
it also challenges Fair Mormon at the moment, because they've put a long series on of, I can't remember her name, I'm afraid, but the woman they wheeled out previously to respond to a previous wave, particularly the Arizona case of abuse scandals in the church, basically trying to argue that what the church does anyway by default is amazingly wonderful, that it is gold standard safeguarding. And I've been trying in pieces to listen to her series. I think it has 10 episodes now on the Fair LDS, or whatever they're calling themselves, just Fair website. And I just think she's literally evil, because she is making excuses and justifying things that are clearly not anything special about that we do compared to other churches, while claiming it is. That is clearly not adequate safeguarding. She obviously doesn't understand what even basic standard of professional safeguarding is, part of which is having these kinds of background checks. But they are pumping this message out that there's nothing to worry about, everyone. The church couldn't possibly be doing more than it is to safeguard children, just with its already abjectly
but now we've seen the church is going to do more than they were doing.
But that's where,
and then they'll probably claim they initiated it or something. You know,
I know I was being sort of a little bit blasé about it all, but those Netflix documentaries, all of the ones that have been at number 1, number 2 for so long now, are getting the message out to ordinary believing members and their families and their extended families that it is not a safe place. It doesn't matter how much she says that on Fair, which is quite niche. I never knew about that as a resource when I was active and believed.
It's not got a huge audience. You know, people aren't impressed by them. They're a dying voice.
Who want to find something to prop them up. And I think actually sensible people who go to church but also have a job and children at school and children in sports clubs know what safeguarding looks like. And they must realise that with the best intentions in the world, there is a huge amount of trust and gullibility when we just hand over our kids at the chapel doors and cross our fingers and hope that they'll be safe, hope that the bishop's called the right person, hope that they've discerned when somebody's being honest and has good intentions. But there have been too many cases where the best of intentions were had and then children have been harmed, young people have been abused, and it comes out and it has a ripple effect for decades and decades and decades, because often they don't actually talk about it until they are adults themselves. So I think we are the generation now where we are advocating and standing up for not only our own children, but for those peer group of ours that were abused, and saying, no, 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 no. It all got pushed under the carpet. We're not allowing this to carry on anymore. So even those believing members who want the best are probably pushing for this in the background and not listening to FAIR anyway, Peter. So, yeah,
Can I point
huge positive.
Can I point to something Jess has said in the comments? Seems a bit. Peter, one moment. Jess is saying that real problems with commenting about another country's laws, in this case, dangerous false reassurances. I don't think anyone's trying to give false reassurances here.
No.
I don't think anyone's trying to take a position on how good this law is or bad this law is. We're simply pointing out that background checks or checking registers of any kind is going to catch some people, not all people, but it will catch someone that maybe otherwise wouldn't have been caught.
Well, it's the easy
and they
win,
are
isn't it? It's
helpful.
the low-hanging fruit.
Right.
Like, literally, the state has gone to the effort of recording that this person has previous convictions. You could at least check that list.
Check that list, right?
It'd be reckless not to check, wouldn't it? It would be reckless not to look.
It's madness.
Like, no one's saying that this is going to solve everything. No one's saying this is going to fix any problems. No one's saying this is going to catch everyone. No one's saying that this should be the end of the story.
It's one of a list of things that you should do if you have a professional level of safeguarding.
This is a first step that we thought the church might never take in the heart of Utah. Absolutely. This is a step that people said, that we got in the UK. We got a slightly more comprehensive step. And people said, why can't this happen in Utah? And now we're seeing that perhaps it's starting. Perhaps the church is starting to make a move towards checking one of the readily available sources of information about some of the people that are out there who might cause harm to children. So if you have an issue with that or think that's causing some sort of false reassurances, please be assured no one's saying that this is going to fix everything. We're just pointing out that as far as I'm aware, this is legitimate memorandum that's gone out that shows the church is starting to do something other than its complete denial that there's even a problem. Sorry if that's
literally one of Jennifer Roach Lee's episodes. Go and listen to them. Go to the FAIR website, double their numbers, and listen to what she's saying, because one of her episodes is just downplaying checking an existing list of sex offenders as being actually that much use. How stupid do you have to be? It's basic, it's a precautionary measure. That's what it's all about. Why even have these lists if you're not going to check them? I mean, you can't even make up and it's just all a symptom of cult brainwashing, of like, I have to defend the indefensible no matter what, and sit here very serious and give every possible mental gymnastics answer, which is FAIR's speciality, to create kind of noise, to create an overall fuzzy impression that it's all brilliant. Everything's fine with our existing policy, which in the small print still allows people to go one-to-one on ministering visits, which is a with young people, which is a perfect grooming opportunity. But she doesn't mention that at all, because she hasn't actually bothered reading the actual page of the actual training, and missed that completely, and declares that it's all about the too deep safeguarding. That's kind of all it ever says, is too deep. But it also already allows a huge exception for that. So these people, it's amateur nonsense from the apologists. It's amateur nonsense from the paid professionals running the church and its systems and its legal team and its alleged safeguarding teams. They, like any teacher, anyone working with youth in a responsible charity, certainly in our country, and I'm sure in America, has this basic training that is leagues beyond anything these people have even thought of.
Can I just point something in the comments here, Peter?
Every congregation who knows what proper safeguarding looks like.
Because we've got, because we can go on that point for a long time. I think you've made your point quite clear that any other secular organization has worked this out a long time ago, and the church is behind. Spencer Davis has also worked out something, which is the ability to maybe doctor footage or somehow come up with footage that maybe doesn't exist. He says that I apparently Nemo, stopped attending the church, and then realized I could make money by going just to say I'm a member, and he has video proof of such. My email address is available on my YouTube channel. If you'd like to send me that video evidence, I'd love to see it and know exactly what that is. So let's go.
Can I just say, in response to, there's been kind of a heated debate going on in the comments about whether Nemo actually sincerely believes any aspect of Mormonism and has just been faking it. And someone said, isn't Nemo on the record affirming any church doctrine? I know that you are. I'll speak for you, Nemo, and you can just nod and say yes, but I do it myself. Nemo absolutely affirms the church doctrine of prioritizing the poor over the rich. He affirms the church doctrine of common consent and transparency and responsibility. Nemo affirms the church doctrine of the Ten Commandments, that you should not lie, that you should not steal, that you should not facilitate the sexual abuse of anybody. He affirms that. He's put himself on the line. He's participated in proactive activism to ensure that the church sticks with the things that it taught him, like it taught me, like it taught Ruth, like it taught all these other dissidents that are annoying the TBMs. We affirm those doctrines wholeheartedly that we were taught in the scriptures by Jesus, by our church, in the seminary. We affirm the doctrine that people should be honest in all their dealings. We affirm the doctrine of Doctrine and Covenants 121, which teaches that that as soon as you give money and power to people, including priesthood ordination, a huge number of them are tempted to abuse that power and exercise unrighteous dominion. Therefore, they need to be held accountable, they need to be scrutinized, and they need to be voted opposed to if they abuse that power and are no longer worthy of it. We affirm the doctrine in Doctrine and Covenants 121 that the nanosecond you abuse power as a priesthood leader, you no longer have priesthood authority. It is gone. Amen to the priesthood of that man. We affirm the doctrine of seeking truth, that Mormonism's great gift to religion is the idea that we have divine potential, that we can think and learn for ourselves. And that's why we're here, not to be compliant yes men and slaves to old men who don't know what they're talking about and are lying to us. We affirm the doctrine that we work out our own salvation. We affirm the doctrine taught by Joseph Smith and Brigham Young that we should seek all truth from every source, from scientists, from people in other religions, from people who are heathens even. If they have truth, that is part of Mormonism, and we bring it into our religion, that is the very definition of Mormonism, as Joseph Smith and Brigham Young both taught, while getting a lot of other things wrong, but we agree with that bit. We affirm everything that Jesus taught and exemplified in the New Testament of prioritizing the outcasts, the lepers, the gay, the lost sheep, that we affirm Jesus's doctrine that the very definition of Christianity is how you treat the exceptions to the rule, not the rule, how you treat the vulnerable, the marginalized, and the different. We were taught these doctrines by the LDS Church. We were geeky little nerds boys who absolutely absorbed it all, and girls who I wasn't speaking for you, Heather. I'm sure you were way too cool for school, but you're too beautiful to be clever. And we affirm that this is our religion. We love Mormonism. We're devoted to that. We will never let go of those values and principles. They are our watchword, our foundation. They are our root in Christ. And that is why we're so horrified that the leadership have run screaming the opposite direction. And that if you carefully and forensically, and I challenge any of the TBM critics of the apostate us to do this, look at every single thing. I've counted 17 or 18 criticisms that Jesus in the Gospels made of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And the church is now doing all of them, all 17. It's obsessing about clothing. It's
right. We're not going to have you list all 17 there, Peter. I appreciate you defending me.
Widows.
But I think we need to get back on.
Yeah.
on
So
track. But thank
let's
you.
have no
Bravo,
more of
Peter.
this nonsense
Yeah.
that somehow we don't believe this religion
I
and its
predict
doctrines.
there will
We are
be a
the product
video.
of them.
If a video does ever emerge from Spencer, it'll be a video of me saying I realized that I could make a difference, and he will somehow interpret that as me saying I realized I could make some money. But that's not the case. And for a long time, I didn't make any money, and I'm still not making a lot of money now, to be honest.
You don't have to justify
You know what I mean?
Nemo,
So
spending time and effort, and if that comes
It's
with
a full-time
well,
job.
yeah. The American
That's
attitude would be if
absolutely
I'm working, I should be paid. That would be, you know, the American attitude. So I don't know where
and the
Spencer
irony
hails from,
is,
but
Spencer by his participation is actually paying
he's making me
you. So
money. Yeah.
thank you, Spencer, for turning
Cheers,
up
Spencer.
and joining in. Your content is welcome.
Yes, your contributions are more than welcome. This is why I don't kick people out of the chat. It is that reason. Okay, so back to the church. And all this started because I actually started reading the chat. That'll teach me. I'm ignoring you all again. So the church says the law takes effect May the 1st, 2025, and we want to be compliant from day one, which will take several hours for your units to achieve. The attached letter information sheet explains how to comply with the law. Then they do the normal hand waving. The church continues doing everything it can to prevent abuse of any kind, as though this has only just occurred to them. And to respond to it appropriately when it does occur. President Russell M. Nelson, because of course you can't send out a church letter without quoting President Russell M. Nelson. So the church continues to do everything, blah, 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 blah. What's interesting is when it says who needs to be checked against the registers, state presidents, bishoprics, and branch presidencies, stake, etc., etc. But however, you should not limit your search to individuals in these callings. Local church leaders should be aware of anyone in their congregation who is on this register. Thus, start by searching the register for all sex offenders in your ward boundaries and checking those names against your membership records. Because the search is geographical, this will only take a few minutes. So they're saying, no, you need to check everything. You need to check everything that you can, not just the people in callings, which I think is good. It's quite thorough.
Yeah.
And that's it. People can, I will post those on my Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, etc., so people can read those letters in their own time. But I believe those letters are legit.
The lovely thing about that process, because I know in the States it is different to our system over here in the UK, and I'm going on the information that I know. So I have a friend who is American, and she said it's very common as a mum with young children to check your neighbourhood and know who the sex offenders are in your neighbourhood. You know where they live, you know what their names are, you know who they are. Now, the disconnect is when you happen to live in a very Mormon neighbourhood and they also happen to sit on the pew on a Sunday, or they're called to a calling at church, because then we have that duality where on the one hand, you know, they're a threat, but on the other hand, you know, they've been given a calling and that we're told to forgive and forget, and we're told to the spirit of discernment and all of those things. And there's that trust in the process and in the system. So this, I actually think, allows people to align more with their actual understanding of the best thing to do as a parent, which is to, if that's the system in America, that you've got a sex offenders register and you can check and you know where they live in your local community, that also then translates through to, and they won't be given a calling with your youth or your children in the chapel. So you don't then have to figure out how to trust and what to do about that dichotomy. I think it's really good.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think that's where we'll leave it tonight, folks. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining in. Thank you very much, everyone, for being very spirited in the chat. I hope that Peter's defense of me wasn't too cringeworthy, because I certainly cringed. But, you know, thank you very much, Peter, all the same. Thank you, everyone who continues to watch, who continues to donate and support the channel and support me continuing to do this full time and trying to make videos that you find worthwhile. If you don't find them worthwhile, you're always welcome to leave a dislike, because that just counts as engagement. YouTube doesn't care whether you like or dislike. Just there's a little insider trick for you. But if you like this video, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe so you see what other videos I do. I have general conference coming up. I have conference halftime shows coming up in which I will be staying up till 4 in the morning to watch general conference so that you don't have to. And if you would like to support me in doing that, you can send a donation now. You can become a monthly donor at the link in the description. You can turn up at the halftime shows, support me there, watch them, share them, just generally get involved. It's great. It's my full-time job, and some people don't like that fact, but you know, it's been a fun ride. So thank you very much everyone for watching, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye.